I just got a notification that we are on custom live stream service, so something's working.
All right. Now we are about to head over to the social media aspect. Give me 1 second. You think with all the technology these days, it would just be one button go. But the problem is I want to have like 5. All right. Now we've got me on Vimeo. The problem is I want to have us on like all sorts of stuff.
Every platform possible.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. We are now on Zoom, baby. This is going live.
I'm waiting for TikTok. When are we go live on TikTok?
No.
Okay. Jamin and I were just talking about the butter. We're about to go live on LinkedIn right now. Hi guys, welcome. Give us 1 second because we have a lot of people on Zoom right now still coming in. But let me start the show off right. You can drink your beer too.
There we go.
That I can do.
Chandler is in the comments, baby. Chandler, what's up?
Yeah. Welcome to Madtropolis. Welcome. This is the moment everyone has been waiting for. I can tell you that brokers and carriers have been licking their chops to ask shippers the real questions. So welcome to the show, and we are going to do a different format. You have the ability to go on Zoom this time. And I mean, not just to participate, but to watch as well. We've opened up Zoom, which we have attendees right now on Zoom. And you are also live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, and Twitter too, I think. There has been a request from Jamin that we join on TikTok as well. So, okay, first and foremost, I want to introduce our freight godfather. He didn't want that nickname. He got stuck with it. The people gave him that nickname. He did not ask for it. He keeps trying to give it back. But we like that nickname. We're keeping it. So, Ron, can you introduce yourself? This show is Ron's idea. This episode is Ron's idea.
It's my one good idea of the year. I'm Ron. I've been in supply chain for almost 30 years. Spent 20 years with Nestle Water all over the United States and Canada, manufacturing and logistics. Managed the supply chain for North America for Monster Energy for about 6 years. And then I spent about 3 years in beer, craft beer side with Stone Brewing here in San Diego. And then global side with Pabst, and now I'm doing my own thing. And I am not shy and tend to say things that I think. So that's why I'm
Ron,
here.
You got somebody in the comments that just said you got 30 years in. It says you don't even look a day over 25. The math doesn't add up. Stop lying, Godfather. Stop lying.
I've got a filter on my video camera that makes me look prettier than I am. Chris can see how ugly I really am.
Is everybody, hey, to my moderators, just wanted to double check we are live on LinkedIn. I was like, here we go. Okay, so what we're going to do is, I'm Cassandra Gaines. For those of you who do not know me, which right now I think are very few, but I am a transportation consultant / lawyer, now turning into having this show. It started just out of COVID. I just wanted to hit the live button and ask legal questions that has developed into this. Yeah. So my moderators, the Gov, JD, and then we also got Buddha, who's Jamin. You guys want to introduce yourselves? And then the shippers are all going to introduce themselves, and then we're going to start having fun.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Nice. I'm Jamin, J, a.k.a. Buddha to some. Again, just like Ron, that's not a self-proclaimed name. Been in freight and logistics on different sides for the last 14 years. And just like the Gov always says, I'm here just to learn and to share some of my screw ups and things that I've learned over the years and have some fun.
I like it.
Nice. Well,
JD,
take it away.
Gov.
I am the Gov. You can see I have my Harry Potter wand, Luminos.
I don't know who decided to get him that. It was a bad idea.
Oh my goodness. It is time, guys. I am JD. I'm in breakdown. I'm in maintenance. So I don't talk about it often, but maintenance is my love. It is my first lover in the logistics industry. Everything maintenance, mobile repair, diagnostic, tow, anything. I love that. Those are the things I'm looking for. What I'm thankful for Cassandra doing. She has brought about this community of Madtropolis to talk about things that typically want to talk about. So the Godfather tell you, a lot of the industry siloed and we don't have these conversations. So this conversation here is huge. Thank you to all the citizens out there right now. We love each one of you that protect and defend Madtropolis as Cassandra struggling, cracking open that bottle of beer over there, baby. So welcome, guys.
What is going on? All right, so let's introduce our shippers. And that didn't work, JD. I waited for it, but it didn't work. Let's introduce our shippers. Can we please start with one of my favorites? I'm sorry to be favoritism, but can we please start with Sharon? Sharon, could you please introduce yourselves to the group? Sharon and I met at a conference, a very interesting conference, but we met at a conference and we fell in love. And Sharon is saucy like me.
Hey, my name's Sharon. I am from Alabama. We are the largest manufacturer of threaded rod in the United States. We ship about 15 million pounds a month, all manufactured at our facility here in Pelham, Alabama, just south of Birmingham. I've been with the company for 25 years, so I have a little bit of knowledge behind me.
You War Eagle or Roll Tide?
War Eagle and actually the Irish. I'm originally from Indiana, so I'm a Notre Dame fan.
Whoa, this completely changed how my feelings are.
Are you a Bama fan?
I am 100% LSU SEC fan. Okay, guys, baddest Tigers in the land. All right.
All right, and I'm excited to have you, Sharon. Thank you very much. And now let's try our Canadian. John, do you want to introduce yourself? And I unmuted you earlier because you had a little background noise, but now you're perfect.
Yeah,
welcome, John.
The kids are outside now. That's why. So I also appreciate being known as the Canadian. So that's why I sound funny to anybody who might be listening. Look, I've spent 13 years in logistics, so transportation and distribution. I've worked in fast-moving consumer goods, the food industry, primarily focused on refrigerated and frozen. So we also do some dry, obviously. I've been able to work with a lot of 3PLs, a lot of carriers, and also running my own fleet with unionized drivers and our own assets. So a little bit of everything on that movement, transportation, distribution side. And sorry, one last comment. Just
yes,
you guys, our job, clearly it's stressful looking at Chris and Ron and me. Like we gave up our hair for the work that we do. So we'll keep that in mind as we're asking the questions today.
Yeah, there's a reason I'm wearing a hat.
Wait a second. So I want to see this. Grace says, how is an SEC fan? What does that mean? I'm not a sports person.
Asking me how a SEC fan is. We're doing lovely right now. The weather's fine down here. Thank you. Everything is great in Tiger Land. The SEC will be back in action. Jay Butter is over there with his USC-esqueness. And so I'm down in the bayou. We are doing just fine, baby.
All right, I like it. Okay, so let's jump to Chris. Chris, who I gave you a hashtag, you don't even know about it. You're called Beer Shipper. Wow. Welcome to the party, Chris. Could you give us just a little introduction about yourself?
I've followed this guy you call the Godfather around quite a bit. I've worked with him at Monster and Nestle. I left for a while. I worked for I worked for a transportation company, Biaggi, and now I'm with Stone Brewing. So on the beer side, I've done everything on the supply chain side. I've been doing this for about 25 years myself. So I do procurement, planning, warehousing. So.
Oh, you're perfect. Welcome to the party. Did you bring beer?
Got beer. It's still a little early here in Southern California, but
never too early.
I still got to work after this, but I got plenty of beer, that's for sure.
All right, I'm just hitting up a graphic here, and then I gave you, Tony. I gave you a hashtag as well. I don't know if you saw it. It was Hamburger Shipper. Tony's very popular right now because he challenged the status quo on LinkedIn, posting information we'll talk about in a little while about the cost of transporting hamburgers. No, eating hamburgers, right, Tony? I think it was eating hamburgers. Let me take Tony off mute. There you go, right. Tony. Tony, introduce yourself to the crowd.
Tony.
Hi guys, I'm Tony. Similar background to John. I grew up I was a truck driver. I was a truck driver for a long time, moved into the office on the other side of the desk in manufacturing distribution, started out in livestock and then moved into steel, commodities, now building materials.
I like it. All right. Let's get started. So we were all trying to decide what I did hit on everybody, right? Yeah. Okay. We all tried to decide. I'm going to unmute you guys just in case you want to dive in on your first question, because Jamin and JD and I, we were trying to figure out what's the best question. Let's hit them hard. I posted something on LinkedIn earlier today that said, it said, "Dear Godfather." How?
Oh, wait, my bad.
It said, do you still use the RFP process or RFQ process? And do you think it's antiquated? And if you're still using it, how do I get ahead? Oh, by the way, they're fucking annoying. FYI. Thank you. Brokers and carriers.
They are annoying. I think RFQs as a process for a shipper, at least I'm going to speak for myself, and actually Chris and I have followed the same process.
Hey, Ron, what is an RFQ?
Or an RFP or an RFI or any other freaking word.
What is that for the people that don't know?
Oh, sorry, Jesus. Yeah, so request for quotes, typically the annual process you go through or semi-annual, depending. Quite frankly, if you're like one of my previous employers, it's the biggest shit show that exists. It's your opportunity to dump out thousands of shipments that you're supposed to be able to guess today in October what it's going to cost you to ship, a 3,000 mile route in June, and then I'm going to hold you to it. And then I go through some really weird back room magic and make these massive spreadsheets make sense, and then I quote unquote award my freight. I think you can tell what I think of them. I think it's completely antithetical to the way anybody bids anything else. Whatever it is that I'm buying, there's typically a much more involved and deeply conversational with rates and statistics and understanding of the total marketplace. RFQs for freight tends to be extremely antiquated. I think it's the word you actually use, Cassandra.
Yeah.
And actually for folks that love to send blind emails asking how you can get involved, there's an easy answer. Not by sending blind emails. It's pretty much going to end up in the trash. Just a fact. Don't send the email. I'm not going to read it. I don't care that you went to Shipping for Dummies 101 and know how to copy and paste you will take the best care of my freight in this turbulent market. Great.
Ron, real quick, what if they hope you're well?
Oh, I like the well. Yeah,
they don't really give a shit. They just hope.
Yeah, they're there to help me. Yeah, no. I think RFQs, though, is the way most shippers still do them. Frankly, they're exercises that are more for the CFO than they are for the people that do the work.
Because I was wondering how they even came about, or even who uses them these days.
Well, they provide one really valuable service for shippers of size, especially if you're a publicly traded company. It's an audit compliance rule. So if I ask a shipper that they are going to agree to carry X load, when we do our freight auditing, we always compare it back against what the RFQ showed. And that may or not matter, but it may matter for if you're looking to control your costs and you want to see what the marketplace is doing, you can compare to the original. But if you are a publicly traded company, it's actually something that follows with your quarterly results. It has to be a track record. And I know at Monster, I think we kept them for 7 years.
Wow. I was actually thinking maybe people were using them just so they made sure they had their pricing thumb on the pulse. They'll have some really cheap rates, some really high rates, and then they're looking in the middle and they're like, all right, we're right where we need to be. Wasting a whole bunch of people's time.
Wow. It depends. It's not always a waste of time. I mean, I'm more aligned with Ron, for example, than saying I love RFPs and things like that. But at the end of the day, I mean, there's a couple of good reasons why a shipper would want to use them, right? But I mean, like anything, it depends if you're using it properly or if you're abusing it. People who send it out all the time, who are just essentially fishing and they're not really serious about it, like that's just abusive and that's not helping anybody. But if you have it tied to your contracts, let's say you sign contracts with your carriers 3-5 years, right? You want to make sure that at the end of that period, you have an RFP process because, you stop looking at people, you stop having certain conversations, you stop really looking at certain lanes the way your business can change over 3 or 5 years. You know, maybe when you first started with a carrier, like, hey, there's 100 trips on this lane. That's awesome. And then 5 years later, there's actually 1,900 trips on that lane. Like, you know what I mean? So, you know, there's some value for a shipper to go back and really understand their business. I actually think that's probably the biggest benefit of the RFP is the work that people like, you know, my teams, Ron teams, and Chris, everyone's teams would do to actually consolidate and get an idea of what you're doing out in the marketplace. But they have to be used properly for sure, because they are difficult to fill out. And honestly, the challenge that's coming with RFPs is that they're only going to get harder. The last one that I did had way higher standards in terms of data, accuracy, information that was requested. Unfortunately, it really did highlight businesses that were a little bit more put together and those that were a little bit more hands-on, a little bit more manual.
How many people Yeah, I felt like it was too, JD. And by the way, guys, I do want to pause and let's recognize that JD finally figured out how to do a virtual background.
That's like on
finally, you guys, he has spent hours. He called Zoom racist like 18 times.
100%.
Hey, Jill's joining us too.
No, JD, this background here, I disappear if I put a virtual background on. So.
Yes. Okay, so it wasn't just me. Because it sounded like I could put my hands up and I would just literally disappear into the background like Harry Potter's invisible cloak. But I mean, the Harry Potter reference was great to feel like I had an invisible cloak, but I didn't want the invisible cloak.
You know what's interesting is that I still see shippers using Excel documents for these RFP submissions. Okay, first of all, maybe we should take a step back. Like, how many people, just by raise of hand, still use and support the RFP process in your business?
I can't say I use and support, but I will say the last RFP that I had, similar to what John said, it was 393 questions. And I felt like it was only because they were trying to weed out people who weren't going to fill it out. Yeah, like what's our DNB number and what was our annual revenue for the past 3 years?
Yeah,
and
I see that a lot.
I mean, it went into detail. Now, mind you, I'm on the maintenance side, but I'm just saying RFPs and RFQs can go so to the granular that you almost feel like just saying, you know what, forget it. I don't care. I want to do it.
Well, that's when there's no relationship there. I think John put it well where I'm at when he went like this, because it all depends on what your intention is, what the strategy is, and how you execute it. Because some of them, to your point, Cassandra, are just Excel rodeo clown shows. I mean,
seriously,
there's no strategy. It's just chasing cells around.
Unbelievable. Sharon, what's your process? Do you use these things or?
We do not use that. We send out a list to a group of carriers that we use regularly, and it has the load on it, where all the stops are, and the rate we're willing to pay. And if they want it, they email us back. We use some other tools to make sure that we're still within the market where our freight market is here in Birmingham.
Oh, that's really nice, because I think most of the time everybody else is giving the shippers their prices and rates and whatnot.
We give the carriers our rate, what we're willing to pay.
Cassandra, we got a question for the Godfather. It says Godfather, which I love that they addressed you as that, Ron.
You can't get rid of it.
They didn't
Never
even say Ron.
Never.
They just said Godfather. So it says,
didn't do it.
Godfather, understand you don't like the RFQ, but how are you optimizing or expect optimization? TMS rates, API, EDI connections, etc. Disagree in RFPs, if done properly, are a good component with the procurement toolbox. It isn't the only tool, but portions of networks should be bid via RFP. RFPs should not be for transactional freight, more network control.
Yeah, I agree with the last phrase. I guess my point is that I think that I agree with John completely, and actually what Sharon's doing and how she's doing it. You're basically managing an RFP with a group of carriers that you've already decided are part of your network, and you might expand it to, whatever your number is for your company that you think is important, whether that's 2 or 20. I mean, it's completely dependent on what your transportation company is. I think, though, the way a lot of shippers, big shippers especially, will do RFQs is what you referenced as far as the 300 questions. That's not an RFQ. That's I'm trying to vet you as a vendor, and I'm either too lazy or don't have enough time to do it in person. So I'm going to create an abstract form to try to vet you via email that I can put away. My point more is that I agree with what the question was as far as how to manage the RFQ. I just think that it's poorly done if I'm just going to send out, frankly, to 2,000 different carriers in the hope of, they desperately want my business, and that's the way I'm going to manage it. But as far as control documents, sure, I agree. And CFOs will actually demand it. So I think it makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Chris, what are your thoughts on this? I saw you do hand raise, semi-hand raise. You have various opinions. We want to hear all. Maybe
I've been involved and we did it on the procurement side for not just transportation, for other purchases, and vendors that we're dealing with. We went through some pretty extensive RFP processes, and the questions are up front, are valid. That what Ron says is you're vetting basically who do you want to do business with. You're gauging your liability. You can't do business with everybody. You've got to be careful about who you do business with, especially when people are moving your freight or you're buying, certain items from them. So I think some of that is valuable and important in making sure that you've got that information. And then, I think, Cassandra, you had said it, it's a validation of what's going on in the market. If you've got new leaders coming into organizations, which happens a lot, they're bringing experience from their previous employer. And
don't you love that
they've done business with, and they're like, hey, we're going to do it this way.
Yes, it's so true. Or they don't have any transportation experience whatsoever. So those are my favorite.
Look, I think they're valuable in setting the leaders in the organization up with who they're going to do business with. And once you have that, it's a management from a relationship side and managing it. But I think these things happen because of some companies require it. Nestle, they did it, basically the public traded companies, but these private companies, I think once your leadership's in place and you build these relationships, you have to do something very difficult to get out of that loop. But they are a starting point for people to set their business. And then as long as they stay with that organization, you don't see a whole lot of movement there. So.
Go ahead.
Seeing some questions in the comments about if brokers are approaching not just to operate on the RFP or the RFQ, but they're actually can assist in gathering the information, running the process. Is that something that tends to make you a little more responsive to them, or is that something you get hit up with real common?
There's a 3-letter broker I know that loves to sell the fact that they're going to help manage your RFP. I personally, I don't find value in it because, quite frankly, that's the fox watching the hen house.
That's what I would think too.
I just don't. I can see why the executives of that company think that that's a point of differentiation, that they're selling. As somebody that has to buy it, I never found it valuable. On the flip side, though, like what Chris said, where he and I worked together, especially at Monster, it was exclusively brokers. They exclusively managed the RFP. So they did do exactly what you're saying that they did. But that, again, established relationship. We know what they're doing. Quite frankly, they ended up checking each other. So it was one fox watching 5 hen houses. So it was a little bit more difficult.
Wait, the 5 did watch each other, Ron, and ratted each other out like children.
Absolutely.
It was, okay, wait, we need to press pause so everybody knows what's going on. So Ron came up with this plan and it worked beautifully, where he was moving a lot of freight and he narrowed down. How many vendors did you narrow down?
I went from 164 to 5.
And he picked 5. And I think, were all of them brokers or were there carriers in there too?
Oh, actually, there was 1 asset-based. So 4 brokers and 1 asset-based.
Yeah. And then he gave them, I think, different sections of the country, was it?
Yep.
And then they would go out and source everything. But let me tell you something. He would have council meetings and we would go to either where his location at LA, or I think you came to Chicago once.
Yep.
And he used to make us meet by ourselves too. This is quite brilliant. So then we would get in a room and we would sometimes I wouldn't do this, but sometimes we would rat each other out to Ron. We would tell Ron when shit was going down, or we'd tell Ron that we could do a lane better. And it was quite brilliant. And when things went wrong, Ron was able to hold his 5 people, his 5 companies accountable for anything that went wrong.
Nice.
So it worked really well, really well.
We've had a couple. I think JD's the Gov's going to get to this. I think I was looking at some of Chandler's questions about related to this.
Oh no, I didn't see that. I was gonna shout out Ron. It says Tony Jarmuez says your sister Sandy sent him the link. Says he loves what you are doing. He has a conference call at 3:30 and he needs to go grab his Yeehaw 80 beer before the call. But he says take care and keep doing what you're doing,
but
baby.
Make sure to call him Godfather at home too. It's very important that this nickname permeates across his entire life.
My sister already did.
Oh, nice. Yes. Thanks, Sandy.
Hey, Gov, you're going to send Sandy the Godfather a freight shirt, right? You're going to hook her up, Gov?
Oh, God. But you're so smooth.
There
always
is
does that.
Madtropolis merch that is being made as we speak right now. That will be available pretty soon, probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. A few shirts that say Mad Games.
Love it.
Shirts say proud citizen to be a part of Madtropolis.
Yeah.
And the
I love it.
Godfather himself is just going to have a shirt that just fucking says God.
So some people might not know what the heck Madtropolis is. And that's another thing that was some brilliant person came up with that. I didn't. Somebody else came up with it and it stuck, which is all of us in the shipping, broker, carrier, maintenance, any part of the industry, including insurance and attorneys, finance, thank you, and human resources. We're all coming together in that industry and we're being real with each other, just like we are in the show and we have been in the past. And we're trying to unite and form a community. And we're trying not to be so siloed. And I think that's how the Godfather got his name. I mean, he's told us we're siloed. So
we got a heater question in the comments, Cassandra, real quick.
I'm excited.
From some fool named Jamin. Did you get your beer open yet? It was giving me anxiety watching you struggle with it.
It was giving me anxiety too. It's open, guys. It's open. And I can't wait to see Sharon in the middle of her presentation just pull out a martini glass and start doing vermouth. And so Sharon, tell us actually, I have a question. How do I get on that list that you send out to your carriers and brokers? How do I get on that? And hello, Chris family.
Illuminate that, Sharon. Illuminate it, girl. Do it.
Tell us, Sharon. Give us a secret sauce.
So this is where I get kicked off the panel.
Uh-oh.
Because we are not signing on any new carriers right now. We have a group of carriers that we have been dealing with for quite some time.
Interruption. Are they all carriers or your brokers too? You should lie.
There are a few brokers. We will not entertain signing on any new brokers.
Okay.
It is the company policy.
This is going to be exciting.
Why I said, I'm gonna hear some boos. I know I'm gonna get kicked off the panel here.
No, you're not.
I don't think it's bad, but I'm just curious. So why the policy? That's not meant to be an argument. I'm just curious. Yeah.
We got, excuse my language, screwed over royally by several brokers. We paid our freight bills. They didn't pay the carriers. So then the carriers came after us.
Yes, that is so common.
Ensued, and we even know a couple of them that turned around and reopened new companies under a new name.
Yes, they will.
Yep.
2 weeks later.
Yes, they will.
So it left a really bad taste in our mouths. And we have some brokers we have used forever, and they are still we still use them, but we don't sign on.
You got a question out here, Sharon. Someone says, what is the overall benefit of using a pure broker versus a carrier with brokerage arm?
What is the benefit of using a pure broker?
Yep, versus a carrier.
I don't think there is one.
Oh, she's going to fit in really well, you guys. This is nice. Because you have to remember that Ron wasn't saying much different than Sharon. Ron said he picked his companies. And after that, he was out. He was telling everybody to go jump off a bridge. That's all he was doing too. So we will use a carrier with a brokerage arm. Oh, you will? Are you okay with them brokering your freight? We are. Now, so many times we then end up with, we give the load to 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, or 7, 8, 9 end up coming in with it. We don't like that. We don't know who's going to haul our freight. That would drive me insane. It does drive us insane too.
And we don't use, we try to, asset based is one of the big buzzwords. We don't want somebody that has one asset truck and then 800 brokerage trucks. That's not what we're looking for.
Tony's laughing because he knows it happens. Like, hey, listen, I got an asset. It's my F-150.
Wait, you mean I'm not a trucking fleet if I only have one truck? I'm not a large fleet if I have
I got a basket on the front of my bike.
Or, hey, Sharon, we are asset light. We are an asset light broker. We're asset flexible.
I had not heard that until about a year or two ago. We started hearing asset light. Like, was that like Crystal Light? Is that like you have Splenda in you? What is that?
All right, Sharon, you got another question. You are popular right now.
Yeah, I knew she would be. Everybody loves Sharon that meets her.
And
she's saucy.
This from Vitaly. He says, so hypothetically, if you had to bring on a new carrier, what method would you use to vet them and make sure they align with your business requirements?
Okay, so we use an outside company that has their safety ratings, has their accidents, has their insurance and all that kind of stuff. We look at that. We make sure that they have a MC number that's been in, that they've been in business for a while.
Nice.
We don't want somebody that just started 2 weeks ago. We want somebody that's been around for a while.
Very smart, Sharon.
And it's usually we usually get some sort of word of mouth or reference if we're going to add somebody on. So somebody who knows somebody.
Yeah, I like that. That's really smart.
Can I just add to what Sharon's saying? I think it's important too, because I know, Jamie, we've had this conversation. I had this conversation with a few people. Like, well, how do I get in? How do I get on the RFP? How do I get in? How do I become a carrier? The one thing right off the bat, you have to appreciate, every shipper is going to have a different kind of business. Does that particular shipper, do they have a lot of logistics? Do they have a lot of internal knowledge? Do they have a lot of internal control? Dealing with them, going for them, that's going to be a very different situation than someone who, maybe is used to using brokers on a regular basis or just contracting things out. So, the one thing you guys really have to appreciate when you want to get in with a shipper is actually understanding what is my business, what's my world, what do I do, and how do I work? Because that really needs to come into play for you to try to work with me in the future.
So, John, I'm going to challenge you on that because I've heard that. I think that's really a good point. But some brokers, especially on the survey I sent out in advance, they asked the shipper panel, how do I go about learning more about your business, more about your pain points? Because you won't tell us what they are.
Yes.
Well, I'm not going to tell you when you call me up and say, do you have a load for me to move? Like that, I can guarantee you is going to find out.
Exactly.
Free Godfather is like, what?
I was going to call bullshit. I mean, quite frankly, how do you learn more? There's this neat thing we call phones and Google. I mean, it's not that tough. I mean, for me, and I'm going to absolutely agree with John about how do you become a carrier. I think the one thing for me is I look at freight, what they lack. Very few companies are able to talk about how they're innovating, either their company or the industry or what they can provide for you. It's always the same two things, cost and service. Yeah, I get it, guys. You're all going to treat my freight great. But what can you provide that's going to actually help me grow within the relationship? And that's frankly, if you look, and I hate to keep going back, but Chris can talk about it because he does it twice a year. A company like Ball, who does cans, they come into every plant and talk about their innovation schedule for the next year, what they're doing to help you grow as a business. Very few freight companies do it. Quite frankly, when I put together the network at Monster, they all talked innovation and they talked about how they were going to do things. Now, they weren't all great at it, but at least they understood the importance of it.
Chris, Chris, go ahead. I can't wait to hear this.
No, I think Sharon hit the nail on the head. I mean, you have to have an in. You have to have a relationship. We deal with suppliers who use certain carriers. We see the different carriers. There has to, again, we all get a million emails and they get deleted. You have to have an in. You have to have a relationship to get in with whoever's managing the freight. That's the way the business works. And then it's like Ron says, what are you bringing to the table that's going to be better than what I'm currently using? Cost and service. Okay, I get it. But what else are you doing that's innovative? Why should I just bring you on you know, and make a more complex network of carriers that I'm using when my carriers are doing fine. You've got to bring something to the table, innovative.
Chris, you got a question. You got a question for you, Chris. You also have a lurker in your background back there. I don't know if you see over there.
That's my screen. That's my screen setup.
It would be awesome if he came by and he was like dancing in the background. Oh, speaking of.
Is that Terry? Oh, no.
Yes. Come on, Ron. You can drink your beer instead. Where's my beer?
Is tequila acceptable?
Tequila is acceptable. Sharon, you are welcome to drink your vodka.
Thanks.
It is water for Sharon, okay?
Okay.
All right, Chris, here's your question. It says, what is your, this is from Nerfed, excuse me. What is your number one must for a broker in order to be on your first to call? I talked to John earlier this week, and he stated relationship and knowledge of commodity and how they operate are a must to get a chance of any scale. But here's the last question. What about the rest of these fine folks? The people that are just now getting into the industry, the people that are trying to build up their business. What do they do to get to be that first call?
I mean, that's I mean, we said it. I don't know if they didn't listen. It's something you've got to do something different. You've got to bring.
Godfather is laughing, you guys.
I mean,
there's a reason we get along.
Again, a broker can set up and manage these things. You've got to have something innovative or some historical data that shows you've got this strong carrier base that's going to help us where we might be struggling.
Yeah. Can I ask you, let's dig in a little bit more. What if I came to you and, because this is a biased question, but I came to you and I said, the difference between me, Chris, and other brokers is I'm very good at vetting brokers. Carriers. I vet carriers completely different than other brokers. I'm intense about it. And here's our entire process. Your freight will not get stolen and we will be liable for everything and anything. And here, by the way, are all my insurance certificates. Give me your freight. Is that good enough, or do we need to even go even more?
More.
Okay, more.
Can I be honest?
Yeah, Sharon, do tell. I'm leaning in, Sharon. I can't wait to hear this.
I think
Sharon gave up on us.
You know what happened is Zoom pressed pause on her.
No, sorry. There was a delay, so people were still talking. Right now, and somebody made this comment, price is key. And in this environment, the shippers are looking for the cheapest price. I'm sorry, I know that's going to be very unpopular, but we are, and in this environment, we can get it.
Yeah, you can. So that's a good point.
I don't think that, I mean, price for sure is going to matter for a lot of companies, and don't get me wrong, freight spend, it gets a lot of people's attention. You know, to your point though, Cassandra, at the end of the day, I'm going to throw it back to you, and I invite whoever's watching to come and prove me wrong. I want to know the broker out there that pitches himself on being average. I want to know the guy who comes in and says, I do nothing special. I'm like, okay. I probably will mess up sometimes, and other times I won't. Because what you said, I get it. But here's the reality. Everybody says they're the best. Everybody says that they have the best process, they have the best carriers, the best relationships.
The cowboys of the brokers.
Yeah, if someone can prove me wrong, I want the guy who sells on average, or woman, sorry, person.
Thank you.
You tell me, I come in telling them that I am just okay, and I do a lot of business. I would love to hear from you.
Yes.
We were talking about that, John. What's funny is that almost if you took that line, though, you'd probably end up getting people being like, yo, I'll actually listen. This is odd.
I had one do it.
So Ron, you got a question, Ron. This is from Andrew Teal. So with brokers not paying carriers and the blowback then to the shipper, looking at current attitude regarding brokers and carriers right now, they're protesting of the rates. As a shipper, do you look to distance yourself from brokers, to distance yourself from this negative environment right now? Do you simply take that risk then in the spot markets?
Me? No. But I don't think it's a negative environment that's any different from
like 10 years
ago. I think it's always negative. Mm-hmm. It happens to be now, just what Sharon said, you're looking for the lowest rate, which is great. But 2018, rates were through the roof, and it was negative for shippers. So it's always negative.
Wait, Ron, what about a month ago where there was price gouging going on with carriers?
Some price gouging going on.
Like, why did everybody forget that?
And now companies are laying off drivers, but that's neither here nor there.
No. Let's talk about that, Ron, because that is a fact that people brought up. That they are now laying off drivers. The same way we were talking about healthcare professionals is so important and nurses are so important. If they aren't on the COVID wing, nurses are getting laid off. These drivers that were once so important a month ago are now losing their jobs. The same people that were busting their ass, giving you as many hours as they possibly could with the extended services and shit, are now sitting at home asking themselves, why the fuck did I risk my life to just lose my job?
And then people wonder why we're not loyal to companies. So, on this point, I worry a bit about our small carriers, because how are they able to get freight? They have to work with brokers. How are they going to get to the Rons, the Chris's, and the Tonys, and the Johns, and the Sharons? Unless you guys know that answer.
I think that's what. Oh, go ahead, Tony. Sorry.
They build a relationship with us.
How? They can't get through to you. It's like,
yes.
How do they build a relationship with you? They can't get to you on the phone. They can't get to you in an email. I guess maybe that's why the RFPs are there, because maybe they start giving you super fucking low rates that you'll use us, and then we'll start building a relationship. Is that how you win?
Yeah. Start out with a price. Then we can talk. I mean, what for the broker standpoint, no offense, but as a shipper, what's your fail rate? What's your acceptable loss rate? A lot of times it's 2%. That 2% is my ass on the line at work. I can't have 2% fail.
Wow.
So I want a carrier that I can call. I want a guy that will come into my office quarterly and sit down and answer for the mistakes that they made. I want somebody I can call that knows who's the carrier is, has a truck and a contact with that truck, instead of brokering it out to, I don't know.
Whoever.
Well, and some companies just don't want to deal with brokers. I mean, like Sharon had mentioned, you have to understand the type of customer that you're approaching, right? Some businesses lend themselves really well to brokerage because they have a lot of fluctuation, they have a lot of inconsistency in their movement. When I was in my business, it was really consistent. A broker really didn't add a lot of value for me because I had so much that I could work with directly with my carriers, that the type of stuff that I did work with what was a lot more transactional, where it was a lot more infrequent than my core lane. So how does someone come out? Don't try to come in and take the core lanes. Like when you call me up and you're like, hey, I can move from major city A to major city B. So can everybody. And I mean, like the big guys really want to do that, right? So
that's such a good point, John. Like knowing your pitch to hit. Like so many brokers, if you ask them straightforward, where are you good at? Where do you excel? Good ones can answer, but that's, I think, a clutch point.
The guy that's going to come to me and sell his $1,800 lane in 2018 is going to get $1,800 this month too. We're going to build a relationship to where that doesn't fluctuate so much with the market. They want to count on me. I want to count on them, and we work together.
I think Ron has experience in this too.
But you got people saying in the comments, one guy named Troy Andrews, he says they have to fill a niche or call me when I'm being generous. But those are the only two options he's giving as far as when he's going to open up himself to that. But with these people that are now starting businesses, Cassandra gets it, Jamin gets it, I get these questions. I want to be a broker. I want to be a shipper. With these people that are jumping in, Ron, you're saying what to do as far as give me an offer for a lane, but do they wine and dine you? Do they come out there and
no. I hate golf, and don't take me for steak.
That's why we love him. That's why he's the godfather.
I actually think it's Chris has said it, Sharon said it, Tony said it, John. We've all said the same thing. I'm going to repeat what Chris said. People should listen. What do you bring that's different? And if the different is I'm a small niche carrier and I'm focused in Phoenix and I'm going to handle this small area, or I focus exclusively on last mile, or I'm great at reefers and frozen, or I'm good at over the rail, whatever it is you're good at, frankly, it's your job to figure out the shippers that need your niche that you're in and grow from there. And you might start with I'm great in Phoenix, and then I'm great in the Southwest, and then I'm great in the West, but you got to do it. And too often it's actually, John said, I'm great. I get great service and cost. I'm not average. Well, so what?
But how do they know the niche though?
Leave me alone.
But you guys aren't answering that. How do they know what niche you need? Are you posting?
They got to research it.
That's it. They got to research.
What do they got to do?
Yeah, and I'll tell you guys that I'll give you an example of how little research is done. Is that I'll have clients send me contracts with shippers, and they'll say, "Hey, can you just edit this contract?" And I'm like, "Oh, tell me about the shipper."
Ooh.
They got nothing for me. I'm like, "What what kind of commodity, what's the value, where are the lanes? Like, I need to know that before I can edit your contract, and they got nothing for me. So I end up going online and creeping, freight creeping, I think the Godfather called it. I freight creep on the shipper, find out what their values are, find out what not, because I got these assholes sending me contracts that don't know the answers. How you not know the answers? That's crazy, guys.
So they're trying to write contracts that they don't understand what goes into the contract to hold a shipper accountable for fiduciary reasoning. No,
they have been awarded freight, or they are trying to get freight, and they don't know anything about the customer.
Oh gosh, here I am trying to fight for you guys, and you guys are making my fight useless. I'm fighting for you, and you're sending shit like that to Cassandra. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah,
every day. That's the way it works. Cassandra's dead on. So put yourself in a shipper's room. I mean, and actually, beer is all done in reefers. If it's craft beer, good luck. Your detention's going to suck because none of them can run at the right time. But you can figure that out. Hell, pick up the phone, call your buddies at other companies. It's not like this is a closed industry.
Yeah.
But too often it's, they have no idea.
And I'll give you another funny example is, we've talked about this before, is when my clients come to me and they're all excited about a water bottle company giving them a bunch of lanes. And I'm like, how does a dumb lawyer know this business better than you do? And I always tell them, I'm like, in order for you to make any money on this, you have to pick you have to pick the newest carriers the bottom feeders. You have to pick the bottom feeders to run that freight, because that's the only way you're going to make money, because you're going to get so many cargo claims and so many issues, and the rates are still so low. Like, do you know what you're getting into? Nope, they don't. Sorry, guys. Gals, you got to learn your freight. These guys are right.
Ron, you got a question, Ron.
Just for JD's point, and you guys have said, well, we're not answering the question about how do you build a relationship. We're all saying it, but we're not answering. Okay, well, cold calling is probably the worst thing that you can do. The odds of me picking up the phone when you caught me at a super desperate moment, not very likely.
Everybody's saying zero.
Darren was like goose egg.
It's unreal. The companies that still make.
Tell me about what you do there. How can I give me your worst lane?
No, but exactly. But what did Cassandra say about how she met Sharon? It was at a conference. What are the conferences I might go to? What are the trade shows? Yeah. What about my industry? If I'm in the food business, is there a conference? Is there something that people might be attending? Put yourself there. Ron made a great point. I don't have exclusivity in the stores or to the warehouses that I go to. Who do you know there that might say, hey, I also work with this people? Some of the best relationships that we created in terms of reliability came from, like Chris said, they were working with our supplier, or they were working with another customer and said, oh, hey, if you're doing work with so-and-so, you might want to check these guys out too, because they're really solid. I really appreciate it.
Wow, that's gold.
Yeah.
Hey, so Ron, you got two questions, and because you're the Godfather, I'm going to give it to you both at the same time. So one is from Chandler. Why do shippers not check the credit worthiness of the brokers they work with? This would prove if the broker can pay their bills. That's the first question.
We do.
Second question.
I was about to say,
we do.
We do.
We absolutely do.
So you do. Okay. Second question. This is from Nick B. Running an RFQ for every single load with a lot of carriers through some TMS website versus contract with one asset-based 3PL for 1 to 3 years.
Asset-based 3PL. Right. Sorry, go ahead. Right. I'm so confused by that. Keep going.
I was confused too, but I'm giving voice to
okay. I apologize.
So what do you choose? What are you going to do? TMS and website versus a contract? What do you use there?
I've personally never written freight contracts because I think they're too limiting. I can see where they provide value, and sometimes your lawyers want them, which is fine. But as far as like one asset-based company, I've never been a fan of all your eggs in one basket. I think that's literally too big to fail. And
wow,
frankly, that's the quickest way for me to get fired because you get screwed up. No way. Now you can determine what your strategy. Sharon says she's got a select group of carriers. I know Chris does. That might work and does work at a lot of times. Frankly, the large bottled water company has several hundred carriers, and that's the way they manage it. I can choose to disagree with that strategy, but it's worked for them for a long time. But one big carrier, I haven't ever seen that work without eventually something getting screwed up.
And what I'm hearing as well is there's a big rush to get as many shippers as you can and grow your business as fast as you can. What I'm hearing from you guys is a better alternative is the shippers that you do have do a great fucking job, know their business really well, and ask them to promote you or ask them for referrals, and or naturally they refer you. Like that's how I've worked in my legal practice as well. That's a better way. But I understand that there are brokers and carriers out there who are getting pressure from above.
Yes, they
more
are.
freight, blah, blah, blah.
How many people go to 700 restaurants in a year? I mean, you go to the couple that you like. You don't just randomly start choosing shit.
So true.
Getting a lot of shippers, they don't know what you need. I mean, frankly, the freight I ship is going to be completely different than the freight that Sharon ships.
100%.
The right customer is going to understand that, or the right carrier, sorry, is going to understand that and be able to cater every aspect of their relationship with us to exactly what is important to us. You know, for Sharon, what she ships, it might be value of freight. For beer, it's not going to get stolen, which is an advantage, but it's got to be on time. I mean, so there's differences.
Not going to get stolen yet.
So Ron, you got a question out there, Ron. What was the criteria you used to slim down your vendor list? You went from 164 to 5. So people are wanting to know that.
A long story, not that I'm blowing it off. It was innovation. So quite frankly, the 5 companies I chose at the time, one was asset-based, so they were regional in North New England. So it's very specific to what I needed to accomplish in New England. The rest of them were service and technology-based. I purposely actually didn't want freight brokers. I wanted more, I guess, what you would consider today like digital brokers. This was back in, 2013. But they did a lot of different things. Cassandra referenced the one about the legal one, which is how she and I know each other so well. The companies that had that innovation were the ones that stood out. And that's why I'll tell you, actually, the largest carrier at the time that we used was the three-letter broker.
Nice.
We got rid of them in that. So they went from 12,000 loads a year to 0 overnight because they didn't bring anything new to the table. They literally were just faceless at that point.
Sharon, it's interesting because, and the other point I want to piggyback off of, by the way, is the same thing as like I got to know Sharon at the conference is that, first of all, I freight creeped Sharon. Did I not, Sharon, did I not creep on you?
Yes.
Her and Jill, I had them on a wrap. I already knew them. I already knew where they were in the crowd. And so for those of you going to conferences, a great way is not be fucking annoying and bugging everybody with a hidden badge because trying to hide that they're a shipper, but to pull out key folks that you can add value to.
And don't come up to me selling something expecting me to write a contract in the middle of the aisle for
what is that shit?
Don't be a weirdo. Don't be a weirdo.
Come on.
I'm not.
Everybody just chill. Like, get to know me. Let me get to know you instead of going right in for the kill.
You mean prospects or people too?
Sharon, I want you to tell me something. This is a pivot in a different direction. Hold on. Jay Butter told me to be positive. Hold on. I wrote it down. He was like,
but we should be a little.
He said be positive. So I'm going to go through and ask you guys this question. Tell me one of your pet peeves about either about brokers or carriers. Try to mix it up a little bit if you can, so that we're not all pet peeving the shit out of brokers and carriers. And then brokers and carriers, just when you're like, thanks, Cassandra, now we're going to feel like shit for the next 5 minutes. I am going to have the next question is, tell us the things that make a big difference from brokers and carriers. Go ahead.
For me, one of my biggest pet peeves is the fact that every driver has about 18 grandmothers that die on a weekly basis.
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me right now, Sharon? Are you telling me that Medea died again this week? Graham is gone?
Yes. Excuses we hear. I wish I've written them all down over the years because some of them are, you just get off the phone and shake your head. And how can they even say that?
Oh my goodness. All right, that's a good one. Chris, you want to hook us up with one of yours?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm going to follow her lead. I was just going to, honesty. I mean, we're all professionals here. We understand the business. I look for people to be honest with me. The worst thing I can do is not catch you in a lie, but just find out on the backside that wasn't honest, what you did,
100%.
either be a freight rate or anything like that. So honesty and trust in a relationship is just critical for me. So
And I want to remind everybody out there who are new and they're starting up brokerages, because JD's right, we have a lot of people. Our industry is very small. It's
100%.
very, very small. And I mean, Ron never imagined that he would ever see a lawyer again and had to spend this much time with her. But it's really small. We all run into each other again and again. So if you do get yourself in a jam and you are being dishonest about it, Chris is going to remember for 10 years. And you never know where Chris is. Yeah.
I'll never forget.
See? And then Chris tells his friends. And then Chris goes and works at 3 different shipping companies as well and jams up your business for the next 10 years.
Yes. We got a question, Cassandra, for the entire group, Luminous. So, do shippers pay attention to supplier diversity spends, such as minority or veteran-owned brokers or carriers?
We do. Sometimes a publicly traded company
Really?
requirement for that.
Well,
Yeah, that's exactly what Tony just said.
Say that one more time, Tony.
Sometimes in a publicly traded company, there's a requirement for minimums.
Ooh.
Or the customers that we have. So I use for
okay,
example,
that's better.
Costco.
It's not. Yeah. Okay, I was confused by that. It's the customers that you have are requiring you guys to work with a certain amount.
No,
No,
in
some
terms
companies, I've seen it.
yeah,
No,
Nestle requires it.
Okay. Interesting. Good question. Tony, what's your pet peeve?
It's for a broker, the cold call that says, I can save you 25% today on freight. What am I paying? How do you know what I love it. For carriers, it's the excuses. It's the same.
I feel bad for those brokers who work for that company.
Man.
Because you know they're forced to make that call. Because nobody wants to make that fucking
you
call.
don't have to say it in that way, though. We can all choose to educate ourselves and say it differently. So I don't feel bad for them. I don't feel bad.
And then, Ron, what's your pet peeve?
Mine is actually when salespeople come in that don't actually understand the industry. They actually, all they do is puppet the talking points. So how many times I can tell you that somebody's been in my office that's tried to educate me on driver shortage, or they've been talking to me about hour of service, or they talk to me about accessorials. I get all that. I can tell you the one, I actually had a very large intermodal company come in and talk to me about how they had such a great carbon footprint, and then tell me how they charge for fuel. And I said, well, explain why the hell fuel is a percentage of my line haul. And they went, well, because that's the way we do it. I'm like, okay, your carbon footprint, how many gallons of fuel do you use to move that train? Oh, I have no idea. Then why are you charging me something different? I don't know. Like, exactly.
So they don't know their business.
People will ask me, by the way, Godfather, they've been like, hey, I want to talk to Godfather about something. What do I do? And I'm like, I'm going to give you a huge warning. Know your shit before you talk to him. And I said, because I've sat in a room with some of the top salespeople from top companies in the country, and he danced circles around them and called them on their bullshit.
That's because they know their product, they know their company, but they haven't taken the time to understand the industry. No, go ahead.
I would say, or just say you don't know sometimes. You don't have to fluff everything. Like, you're not going to get tore up unless you're faking it.
Yeah. Chandler says his yacht lease payments are really expensive, Godfather. And
that's fair.
Okay, so let's twist this a bit, because I'm actually, I don't want to lose people. I don't want them to feel like we're bashing anybody. Tell me something, John. Tell me something that a carrier broker has done that was really unique, interesting, or was a game changer for you. If you can think of one. I know I'm jumping on you, and that's kind of a big question.
No, you know what? It's super simple, because at the end of the day, as a shipper, just make me feel important and show me your commitment. Honestly, like, in terms of what you can do and a carrier that does that, when I screw up, when I'm 8 hours behind and you don't hit me with nonsense charges, you don't hit me with a driver that can't show up for another 15 hours or whatever, and you find a way to still help me get my stuff done, you know, that's the type of stuff that goes a long way.
I have to ask my moderators, do my moderators want to bring in people for questions? Anybody who wants to ask a question live, I will warn you though, if you ask a question we've already hit up on, you might get the Godfather slap down a little bit. But if anybody wants to come on, just let
Let
Jamin
us know.
and Gov know.
But I would. That's a good point. That's a great point, and all our panelists have said it. Is you got to have been listening, which is my biggest takeaway. Is the answers are out there. Listen. So yeah, no repeated questions.
So Sharon, do you? Go ahead, Gov.
So there's a question right now because you keep seeing it come up because they don't feel like we're answering it. John, you kind of attempted at it, but I'm going to pose it again. Eric Serta says, so where is a new broker supposed to start? Outside of their relationship, outside of trying to figure out what you need, I only have my word and my service. But if shippers won't give me the opportunity, I'm going to go pick up any other freight to
Okay, do I get to answer this now? Can I try to answer this and someone tell me if I'm right or wrong? Okay. So first, if you're a brand new broker, I think you should look for that freight that is the shippers who are going after the cheapest rates. Ask them for the RFPs, do all the cheesy shit, and go for the bottom feeder shippers, really. The ones who just want simply low rates, don't care. Give them the low rates, take it at a loss, even if you have to, and prove your fucking self. Make that shipper love you.
Good.
And build your business from there. I don't know. That's what I would do if I was a brand new broker. What the fuck do I know? I'm just a lawyer, but I have been listening to these folks. What do you guys, does anybody want to change anything I said? Go ahead, John.
I'll just add in. I mean, you know what? I would just say change your expectation a little bit. You know what I mean? People pick up the phone and they think first time call, first time business.
Yeah.
Just make yourself relevant. Why do you think you see ads on TV 25 times a night? It's repetition. It's like, keep trying to be around me, keep trying to communicate with me, keep trying to show me that you're interested in why. At least then I know you're serious. I'll probably say, okay, let's have a conversation. Let's get into something a little bit deeper. I mean, I don't think it's fair for people to say, hey, I pick up the phone, I'm brand new, I need work. Because the reality is, like, those cold calls, it turns into a situation where everyone tries to make it seem like they're helping me as a shipper more than I'm helping them. The reality is, if I'm spending $75 million a year, I'm probably going to help you in terms of your business because I already have someone that's doing the work, right? And there's a lot of people that want to do the work. So like Ron has been saying, how are you different? How are you going to be different for me? How am I going to keep me important? What's your commitment to me? And keep trying. Show me you're interested. Show me why you're interested.
So how many strikes do you give a carrier or a broker on a lane until you quit giving it to them? Like, if they made it past that point and now they're in a relationship with you, a new one, and he becomes a new one, how many strikes do you give a carrier or broker?
Yeah, one.
Okay.
That's fair.
Don't fuck up.
Yeah.
Don't fuck up.
Amen.
Yeah, it depends.
So hard
it
for
depends a little
brokers.
bit, honestly. It depends the issue. I mean, you have someone that gives you a major safety violation. That's probably it right there, especially right at the start of the relationship. If it's an honest mistake and you're like, okay, cool, we just started, but now we're really watching. So one at best at the start, unless it's serious, and then it's probably just done.
Yeah. And for those of you who are just joining us, we have shippers who are answering tough questions. We have two audiences. We have those on Zoom, about 50 people on Zoom, and we have another 100 on LinkedIn. And then we have more people on Facebook and YouTube. But I want to let you guys know you can ask the shippers questions. One question we will ask that you don't ask. We're going to ask you not to ask this question, which is, how do I get your business? Let's move past that one and let's ask a more interesting questions because we beat that one. Matthew, what you got for us, Matthew? Hold on. Let me unmute Matthew.
Matthew, you better come with the heat. I promise you, if you come with the heat, you will be kicked out.
Okay, Matthew, he's got a wand. Wow. Matthew, this is what happened when we gave him a wand.
I saw that. And you know what? I just drank a thing of cold water. So, I don't know how hot it's going to be, but
don't listen to him. Just tell us what your question is.
Actually, my question is really directed at Ron, because Ron and I had
we don't know Ron. You mean the Godfather.
The
right?
Godfather, yes. The Godfather and I had a fairly extensive conversation last week and about my particular business and how we're entering into the marketplace. And I guess my question is, what is the position from Ron as a shipper for a company like myself?
What is a company like yourself before you answer that, Godfather?
There we go.
You got to give some context, Matt, to the people that are watching who don't know the great.
Without a sales pitch.
I apologize. Well, that's tough. But No, I started a platform. It's a digital platform. We are not a broker. We've actually taken the broker out of the equation. So it is a true shipper and carrier connect platform.
It's just a load board.
Yeah, it's a load
Okay.
board where the
DFM.
shippers.
So let's ask Ron. Ron, what's
Yeah.
your answer for load board? Oh, my mom is calling.
Tell mom I said it.
Hey, Mom. Go ahead, guys.
Well, I mean, Matthews is a little bit different in that it's their load board that they're managing. I think the real value is if you're a smaller shipper that has no relationships and frankly doesn't have the infrastructure or the people to manage those types of relationships, Matthews' solution can connect smaller regional carriers with smaller regional shippers without the need to pay frankly, the profit margin of the broker. So I think there's some real value in it in those situations. And I think that it could work for very specific shippers and carriers.
So a shipper, a larger shipper you don't think it would work for?
I think it could work if they decided that their strategy was they wanted to manage a load board. I think very few shippers actually want to manage load boards. That's why they partner with specific transportation companies.
What is a load board, Godfather? What is it for the people on right now that are trying to jump in that have no clue, who also don't do research or know what Google is? What is a load board?
It's that giant television screen inside of every brokerage house that shows all the shipments in the world, and I'm supposed to be really impressed every time I walk in because I go,
the post and pray model. Like where I tell you about all the great carriers I have, and then I'm just launching it up on DAT or.
But it works. I mean, quite frankly, that's people. That's how you connect. And Ingrid's not on today, but that's how you connect the Ingrids with, shipper Chris. Chris would never know Ingrid, that board, and what Matthew's service provides could make that connection if that was something that was valuable. And if you decided that was your strategy.
Godfather, you got one more question. You got from Mark Tuchman. How many of the shippers asked to review the carrier broker's insurance policy instead of just getting a COI to verify coverage?
Mark Tuchman.
I think that's actually, I would say in my experience, very few. For myself, I'm all over it, but that's a longer story.
Why is it very few, though? Why is it very few, Godfather? Why aren't
because that should be enough to understand what's going on. I mean, realistically, when you're doing that stuff, one, it's part of your job, so you have to look at it. But from a company standpoint, it's going to the CFO and it's going to compliance. And compliance has very specific requirements that they have to have, and that's the documents. And the CFO wants to make you sure you're protected. And quite frankly, shit doesn't go wrong too often with that stuff. I've never personally seen a fake certificate of insurance. I'm sure they exist. I've never seen one.
I have. I've seen lots of them, and they're easy to falsify. So I always tell my clients, shippers, carriers, brokers, whoever else you're collecting these certificates, it's hell. It's absolute hell. And Sharon knows this. Like, you've got to make sure you get it from the insurance broker. You have to make sure it's consistently valid, or you've got to pay a very expensive company called RMS to do it for you. Then there are still exclusions. It's hell. It's a rabbit hole. It's an utter rabbit hole. Sharon, is that what you've experienced?
I don't know if we've ever actually gotten any that were falsified, but we did start making sure insurance companies were the ones sending it to us.
That's probably why you haven't gotten any that are falsified.
You can tell the typeset would be different on the address when it was sent to you. And you're like, really? They printed everything out on the computer, but that little bit was a different font? No. So I think they were, but I don't know for sure that they were.
Back in the day, they used to do that with their copy of authority. You could see the font was a little bit different, so you knew that it was falsified. Ooh. Interesting, right? Chris Jolly, let's unmute him. Welcome to the party, Chris.
What up, Chris?
Guys? How are you?
Good. You better bring the heat, and if you want to talk to the Godfather, it's $5 a minute.
Somebody take that wand away from him.
Yeah, I know, right? My question is have any of you guys utilized like a third party, like tendering system who make all of your carrier decisions? And how do you ensure that they are vetting the carriers properly to haul your freight?
Are you talking about a broker?
No. So like, like rate links, for example, like a TMS system. Like, how do you ensure that they're vetting
So like a
those carriers?
4PL or something like that model?
Yeah, something like that. Yep.
Or are you talking about the technology that promises that they vet the carriers that are on their technology? Is that too?
Well, I mean, kind of, because it's like, I mean, I've called plenty of customers potentially out there, and they're like, so and so handles all of our transportation.
Yes, I've always wondered about that. Go ahead. Sorry.
And how do you ensure as a shipper that they are vetting those carriers properly? Is there like a metric that's set in place for that, or is it we gave them all of our transportation, it's their decision?
That's a good question. He's asking if there's a rubric or if there's a standard measurement to
Has anyone on here worked with a 4PL exclusively at all?
Okay, let's broaden the question, which is, how do you trust that a broker or anybody you're using is vetting a carrier properly?
But that's you know what, at the end of the day, Chris, like that's a business by business thing, right? You know, like working in a big organization that you know can get exposed to like a 4PL. Honestly, you'd probably be surprised. Some businesses probably don't vet them anywhere near enough or don't check enough, and some probably do a lot. That's really a business by business thing, right? You know, you don't often have standards. The challenge that you find is that usually companies that are using full-blown 4PLs probably don't have the knowledge inside. So they probably don't really know what to look for. They probably don't know really how to vet. So I would say that probably most companies that are doing that don't vet enough or don't have high enough standards. But I bet you they do if something goes wrong, or once something goes wrong, then they will. But I don't think most businesses do these days.
I guess I'm going to piggyback on what you said. The one thing, don't underestimate how many stupid shippers are out there. It's the truth. I mean, I can tell you, one of my previous employers, when I got there, they had a single carrier that managed the entire business. They were big in the industry. I remember my first conversation being onboarded, talking to the director of sales, who said customers absolutely hate the delivery. It doesn't make sense. But the carrier says we're at 94% on time. I'm like, was anybody like actually check that? And literally the answer, how would you do that? Like, how would you
I always wondered that.
It's pretty easy to do, but the shipper, and that was the company, they didn't have anybody with the experience to actually understand how to vet that reality for delivery on time. And they just thought the distributors were dumb. It's like, no, it's actually, this is the problem. It happens. And so there's not industry metrics.
Ron, there's a lot of companies like us with multiple locations where sometimes the front office lady at the window is booking trucks.
Yeah.
Wow. You know, it's interesting is someone asked me on the list of questions, which some of them quite a few of them we've hit on, but one of them was, why is technology so poor at guard shacks?
I got this.
And pick up.
You ain't even finished the question. I got this.
Tell us,
Alex.
Oh, tell us.
In the manufacturing environment, shipping and that freight cost is just a necessary evil, and they want to spend as little as possible to make it happen. It's the
interesting.
Child. It is their brother-in-law that they get into the job make the wife, the sister happy.
That's honestly true.
A guy like me is stuck in the office.
Do you know how many times? You know how many times somebody asked, "Is shipping a necessary evil or an added value?" That was on my list of questions like 10 times.
It's a good question.
Both. Absolutely both.
So Ron, you got another question out here. This is from, Godfather, because this is from an imposter named Ron Sullins. So we're going to address you. So Godfather, Ron Sullins says, how do the shippers feel when a carrier or broker goes above their head in the org structure? We've heard the
that's actually a heater question.
Yeah.
This is what he says. He says, seems to me the CFO should be the target audience.
You can make that call. Go ahead.
What does that mean, Godfather? What does that mean?
And then I'm going to burn your number from my phone. You're going to get, and frankly, actually, John said it. You really want your reputation in the industry to be that guy that calls the CFO? Your business will disappear overnight.
Mm-hmm.
We actually had that happen recently.
Really?
We had a carrier, had a buddy up at corporate. Hey, can you get me in? They send us the information. And it was one of the vice presidents of our company. Shit. And we look up this carrier and they've had like fatality wrecks. And we're like, you really want us to have this guy hauling our freight? And they were like, well, no. Yeah,
So-
why did you tell? Hello.
Hello. Why? So Sharon, I'll tell
CFO
you.
doesn't know.
One time I worked at a place and ran their compliance department, and someone came to me and said, hey, the CEO's cousin just bought his first truck.
Oh,
And he wants to and he wants to run loads. And I was like, huh.
You want
Well,
a cookie? I mean,
I pulled up his thing, and literally he had gotten his authority like 3 weeks ago. And I was like, no, here's a company policy. Go ahead and read it, because clearly you haven't. And they were like, well, the CEO said that his cousin's going to run loads. And I was like, no, his cousin's not going to run loads at all, ever. And I tell you guys, like for 3 days, that CEO in every single meeting was like, fuck you, Cassandra, every single meeting, because I wouldn't let his cousin run a load. And I still won't to this day. But let me tell you, I remember exactly who asked. I remember the carrier's name. I remember any sales rep that pushed it forever. Like I burned a hole in my memory.
But that's transportation though. So being the new guy here, I'm still a greenhorn 2 years in. When I came into the industry, all I was surrounded with was, oh, that's my cousin Billy Bo, and that's my best friend. And I worked with this sheriff for 17 years because we went to Ole Miss together and we've been buddies. And I'm like, but this isn't providing your company value or profit. You're just having these dead end relationships that are costing you money, and you want me to help you recoup it on the back end. So I'm not understanding why in the transportation industry we're so buddy when we're also so cutthroat when it comes to making a profit. If your buddy's going to kill your profitability, why are you still buddy with them in your business?
I think that it's a unique industry, and you've got to understand who are your friends and how to go in and make the call. Like Jamin will make fun of me because every other person in the industry, I'm like, oh, I know this person. Oh, I like this person. I know how to make the call. I just know not to go above their fucking heads.
This is true.
Nerfad, how are you? Let me unmute him. What's your question?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're good. In fact, we're so good.
Yeah.
Ron, come on. Oh, Godfather.
Salute, Nerfed.
Tell the music.
It's time to drink, folks. Nerfad, are you drinking?
Yeah, I'm drinking soda water.
Oh.
Dude, you are country, because that's what my grandma used to call it. It wasn't pop. It wasn't soda. It was soda water. That is backwoods bayou stuff right there, brother.
Yeah,
I love the backwoods bayou speak. You're always dropping heaters, Gov.
Sometimes I think he makes it up, guys, and we don't know because we're not from Louisiana. Okay, Nerfad, what's your question?
Yeah, I guess just it's more like just to know, like maybe I might be able to even Google this stuff. I'm not sure, but just as shippers, do you guys, for your like raw materials and your packaging and stuff, if it's not directly related to you for your finished product, do you go out of your way and say, hey, this transportation or this broker company does a really good job for us, like you guys might want to take a look at them or something like that? Do you guys give those kind of referrals to your providers of your raw materials, packaging, et cetera?
It's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, we've done this. I mean, and if it brings value to both organizations, it makes sense to reach out to the suppliers and try and use to keep that broker or that truck running. So I think it's absolutely, again, this is the relationship thing. We have relationships with our suppliers, and if it makes sense and we've got a solid carrier, we will absolutely try to keep them so they can come in, get unloaded, reloaded, and bring value to the supply chain. So
I have to tell you that Justin Shepard said nepotism happens all over the place. Lots of business takes place because of a cousin, brother-in-law, or even when it's a horrible business decision. Sorry to go back, but I thought his comment was funny.
Kaz, look what Chandler said underneath that.
And Sharon, by the way, on LinkedIn in the comments, there are a mess of people saying Sharon Russell is awesome. Oh, there's somebody. Yes, she is. And also John McClintock. Oh, nice. You guys are loved. Chris, you've got all caps too. Ooh, Godfather has competition.
Yeah, he does.
So
Chandler's comment talking about that his water right now tastes like it was on time at the dock. I'm sorry, I had to say it.
All right, so
Chandler's great for that dry wit. Every time.
Every single time. So as long as we don't have any more questions, we are going to wrap up our sessions because we don't want to wear our shippers out. And we don't want to anger the Godfather, and he's got beer drinking to do.
You do.
What do you think, moderators?
You got one more question.
Oh, you guys know I love my Randy.
You got one question here where it says, how often, from Andrew Heavener, how often do you evaluate the benefits of shipping your inventory product versus LTL versus TL? What is there some of the things you look for in an LTL provider versus a TL provider?
Ooh.
Wow, that's intense. First and foremost, if I can avoid shipping LTL, I'm going to avoid shipping LTL.
Oh.
I know.
Tell us why, John. Tell us why.
The reality is it's more expensive, right? I mean, you're going to pay more per pallet. You're going to pay more for that product than you can over truckload. You get way better rates over truckload. How often do you look at your LTL? As often as you can. Honestly, if your spend is pretty big in LTL, you should have a pretty good team, or you should have a system to make sure that you're evaluating it regularly, because it can get out of hand really fast.
What do you consider big enough?
I mean, look, it's relative
what do you consider big enough?
Honestly, a few million, for me, it would have been a few $1 million, but you know what I mean? Like, sometimes it just depends, like on the shipper side. It's like, if I don't have any other option, because I'm getting certain products to certain customers and the only way that they order and the only way I can get it there is LTL, I just accept that. I kind of keep it in my mind. But for anyone that has internal logistics, they are always, or they should always be looking about consolidation, moving those small LTL movements to bigger shipments, whether they can get better rates on, 2 half truckloads or they get full truckloads, or they somehow can leverage some of their own backhaul activity. We did that a lot with our LTL. So, LTL is a market that I think most people are pretty aware that they're paying a premium for and evaluate pretty often.
But would you agree in an exchange, you get more predictability, your product claims are easier, vetting is everything's just easier sometimes.
With an LTL, yes.
Yeah, I thought you guys would love LTL. I thought for sure you'd all be like, "Oh yeah, LTL is fucking great," blah blah, because it's so easy.
NMFC numbers, reways,
cargo claims are predictable. Everything's documented. In fact, you can do electronic tendering. Everything's in and out of TMS. Like fucking everything's easy. No, you guys.
It depends. It depends what you're shipping. It depends what you're shipping.
Yeah, for me, LTL was just too much risk. It was a hell of a lot to manage because you're putting a few pallets. In essence, annually, I'm shipping X amount of pallets. If I'm shipping LTL, that's Y number of trucks that now I have to deal with, which doesn't make sense. You want to minimize it. The bigger problem for me was the fact that LTL is always consolidated. I can't tell you how many times my one pallet ended up at a shoe warehouse. Oh. They're like, what the fuck is my beer doing in a shoe warehouse?
Yeah.
That's the way they shipped it. And you got to track it down. I can see where it's really valued for some, but I'm absolutely with John. I tried to avoid it like the plague.
Yeah, I thought you guys would be like, "Oh, this is great, LTL." The only thing that made you guys mad is that you can't like lowball it. No offense, but it's harder to lowball the LTL tariffs you take what you get.
LTL can be a lot of work for shippers too. Like, you know what I mean? When I had to do then my validation or my verification, taking invoices back, make sure that they weighed it properly or that you agreed on the weight and that you weren't getting double billed. Like, again, it depends on what you're shipping, how consistent it is. But I would say that for any high volume shipper with consistent volume, they probably really don't like LTL business.
It's tough.
I can kind of see that. Cassandra, you got one more question I think may be valuable before we wrap up. This is from Matthew Fink. He says, do you think most shippers have multiple value levers, or do you think they are purely focused on price? On the flip side, if a shipper does have a bunch of value measurements, does it also scare off carriers?
Interesting.
We start with price, that's for sure.
Start with price. Okay. Then where do we go from there?
Relationship. Can I trust XYZ carrier, or can I trust big brand name carrier with beautiful trucks that show up every time I call them? The relationship built on trust. We're partners.
I think those are two golden nuggets. Oh, Randy, did you have a question?
Sure.
Randy, if you all remember, sorry, Randy. Randy's my favorite. If you guys all remember, last time we did a dance off, Randy pulled out a guitar.
He did pull out.
He was pretty bad.
A hatchet man. I love it.
Well, but he pulled it out just smooth too. Like
he did. It wasn't a big deal.
He just
Well,
pulled it
because
over
they're
from
right
off.
next to me. See, they're right
Hey, he
next
was
to
just
me.
like, "Oh, here's this guitar I have. Let me play you a song, Godfather."
And then he sends me this. He posts this YouTube link of him singing this badass song that he created, and I'm like, okay, so you're that guy that has an awesome voice, and you know shipping, brokerage, and carrier.
That's awesome. Randy, what's your question?
When you're in the music business, you have to find something else to do to make money. So I got So I'm thinking about going back, actually. We'll see. So real quick on the LTL thing, just something I want to throw at you before I throw out my question is people that have trouble with LTL and small shipments like that, something I do for people is build partials on road trucks, and I'll get somebody that will do 2 or 3 stops along the way and do partials. Some of my freight is even machinery that has to be load to ride partials, so they don't get damaged, that kind of stuff. So when people are having trouble with LTL, that's kind of what I offer them. You know,
Well, let's pause on that for a minute. How do we shippers feel about partials? Cassandra has a lot of opinions about partials.
She probably does insurance wise, because you have to be careful what you're loading with other stuff for liability reasons, for sure.
You got it, baby. And also, I don't like my loads being partialed when I don't know they're being partialed.
Well, but see, that's not what we do. We don't do it that way. We do it upfront and honest and say, we're going to buy 15 feet for this machine. It's going to be load to ride. I'm going to take pictures of it when they load it, when they block and brace it. And
Smart.
It's going to be the same place in the truck when it arrives at the delivery.
Very smart.
So there's a way to do it, and there's a way to screw it up, just like everything else. You know?
I guess I think that, Randy, the way you're doing it is great. I can tell you, though, as a shipper with a number of loads, quite frankly, you've created more stuff for me to do. I've got to track that document, trust that you're doing. I absolutely do a great job. But for me, I'm going to try to get one truck.
You're right. It doesn't work for everybody, but for some, it works great.
Sure.
It's smaller shippers that I'm dealing with. It's people that I've known for 20 years that trust me to, and it's carrier selection. You know, the same thing that y'all were talking about earlier about, you know, validating carriers. I consider that the most important part of my job is carrier selection and qualification, because that's what makes me look good.
And Randy, that is going to make you different, because it's the brokers that are on this show that follow me. They're very different, but in general, sometimes the last thing that's thought about as a broker.
Yeah.
You're just not simply trained that way to put so much importance on it.
Yeah. Brokers, those bad ones that aren't watching, they'll bitch about the shipper starting on price, but then what do they do when they just post it to a load board is they pick the cheapest carrier.
Yeah.
So
it's like, do you not know your business? Do you not know what you're doing? But I'll tell you also is the other thing that scares a lot of shippers and brokers is they don't know how to analyze the data and vet the carriers. They don't know.
There's lots of tools out there and people fuck them up, but then people use them right. And
it's so true. There actually isn't. I don't think there is a tool out there that just simply gives you the answers and the information you need to know. And I think the reason why, like, you always wonder when you use Carrier 411, why are they throwing so much fucking data at me? So much that I don't even need. But they don't just give me a simple answer. They really don't. And that's because it's very hard and you have to know what you're doing. So that's my rant.
Kind of like wanting to know what a safe carrier is from the FMCSA, right?
It would be lovely if somebody would tell us that. That way we wouldn't be continuously sued over
guessing. So, but my question relates to
you had a question.
The innovation and differentiation that people, I do. Being different and innovative for a shipper, how much of that is focused on technology? Is there interfacing technology that people are looking for these days? I know in the forwarding community, it's big. Where a customer enters their stuff in their system and it populates into the order system, and it creates less work, the opposite of what Ron was describing with my partials, which is true sometimes. So what technology is available that you would like to use? How important is that in choosing a broker? Is a interfacing type of technology that you can use that helps you do less work and makes your job easier? What would that look like?
Are you referencing like if I, basically like a way to track the trucks and different things like that?
No, that's easy these days. I'm talking about making your job easier from your process of selling an order to someone to getting it tendered to a carrier. There's interfaces that are built so that your system could talk to mine.
I see what he's saying. So
what kind of technology would make your job easier if you didn't have to do some manual processes in your choosing of carriers and your tendering of carriers that could be automated
that a broker could help you with to make your job easier.
Yeah, like if the
It would
broker
give you
already has
visibility,
their
sure.
own developers and they already can integrate, or they can
Sure.
tender EDI or
But
API.
that's the problem that everybody has right now, is that everyone's upset. Broker, carrier, shippers are all tied in their niche markets of having 6 and 7 and 18 different portals to log into when you're dealing
Right.
with different carriers and brokers. So the unique thing that I've heard some people say they're trying to do, which is building an open API middleware that is basically just a hub spot for transportation that allows us to all say, here's my shit, here's the Godfather shit, now let's talk. The issue with that is that the data sets are so large that it requires a server backing base that is extremely expensive. So the only way you would really be able to afford it is if you created something like a FMSCA or a TIA or another panel and you did a group buying fund.
Has the Gov thought this through?
But I'm telling you, there's in the forwarding business, there are systems where the forwarder will put a system into their shipper. And when they enter something in their shipper, it goes and populates into their transportation system. And I'm just wondering if that's a value. I'm not, the technology of it, I'm not concerned about right now. I'm asking about the benefit of it and how it would help a shipper and what would that look like to make your job easier.
Yeah, Randy, the biggest thing for me, and Ron, I apologize, you can jump in. I mean, the biggest thing in my world where that added the most value is on invoicing, right? Because the one big challenge, for example, dealing with whether it's brokers, carriers, whatever, is the fact that you can have your normal lane rate, or you can have a set rate, your per mile, whatever you want to use. But then what do you do for the detention fees? What do you do for the wait time? What do you do if there had to be additional accessorial fees that were added on? That kind of stuff creates a whole headache in terms of invoicing and stuff, right? So the easiest.
Well, that should be approved before invoicing in the case too, but.
Well, yeah, but how am I going to do it? You're going to call me? We can email back and forth. Do I have to enter your system? You're going to enter mine. I mean, ideally, in terms of technology and innovation, same thing with JD was saying. Having a system that, for example, can push all that over, but it pushes it over, based on rules, and it bases on the things that I've already accepted. Because if I'm not going to accept something blindly with a 5-hour wait charge, well, then I don't need it pushed in my system blindly either, right? So, I think invoicing is probably the biggest opportunity. And then, you talked about tracking and things like that with the trucks. I still think that there's a huge opportunity, and I posted about this, someone jumped on me last night though, but about proactive communication and a much better way to communicate status updates and on time. Everyone, especially like, Jamie, we talked about a broker saying, oh, I call you, I'll let you know it's good. I call so-and-so, having a more holistic thing where the system is sending out, hey guys, everything is green. It's already good.
I'll stick macro point on them and send the customer an email on my hot shipments. And so they'll get an email directly from the truck every hour.
But you don't have
whatever the timing is.
You don't have that for many carriers when it comes to communication, as far as it being automated. What you still have with a lot of carrier shippers and brokers is the same thing that we all do. We're invited to parties. Somebody calls you, you're still at home, you haven't gotten dressed, you haven't gotten a shower. You're like, oh no, man, I'm on my way. You're like, all right, man, click. And then you go get in the shower.
Well, this ties it directly to the driver's cell phone. So,
well, Godfather, do you have any concluding thoughts for us while we, whoops. Whoa. I just pushed a lot of buttons, you guys.
Oh, I got my wand out for nothing.
No,
I'm sorry. Okay. Go ahead.
No, the one, I think I'm grateful that there's other shippers on this call, because quite frankly, they're absolutely echoing the things that I've been saying forever. It's relationships. It's making sure you do exactly what you say you're going to do, and don't fucking pick up the phone and call me and try to sell me your stuff.
Please stop calling people.
This is build the relationship, know your shipper, trust your shipper, develop the relationship. And that doesn't mean take me to golf. That means actually do what you say you're going to do and do it well. And then absolutely, there's going to be bottom feeders. It's going to be all about price. Fine. If you want to play in that place, go play in it.
Yeah.
But for most of the world, it's not too different, and don't overthink it.
I like it. Okay. Thank you.
Ooh, that bass line is
every time you guys I play this song, he loves it every time. Thank you guys. Thank you. This was so educational. Enjoy your weekend and don't get too drunk. And Sharon, make that vodka martini. Make it, girl.
Sharon's earned it.
Thank you, attendees.
Hey guys.